Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rule the Roost podcast, and welcome back, Mr. Ben Bowman. How are you doing, mate? Been a while.
Been a while. Very good, thanks, mate. I've enjoyed the break from Spurs. It's been nearly 3 weeks, and I've enjoyed every single minute of it. Really,
It's been quite weird, actually, hasn't it? It's felt like a longer international break than usual, has it?
I think it's
Is
because
it
we
literally?
came. Well, I think we came. Well, we came straight back in with the FA Cup as well, like at the weekend, and there was no Prem action. Which, to be fair, I think for the FA Cup sake is actually quite a good thing because it means there's
Mm.
probably more eyes on it, which is good, and people care more about the games. Whereas usually, I'm pretty sure like they're sandwiched alongside the Prem, like when it gets to the quarterfinal stage. So I think that was quite a good thing, like for them. But yeah, it made it felt like a longer international break, and also where we're playing on Thursday, it's just dragged out even more, and it's like we're the last team to play when we get back, which again is not a bad thing because we're kind of just putting like delaying it and just kicking the game further down the road, and not having to think about it as much. But yeah, it felt like a longer one.
Preserves the magic of the FA Cup for all the dads, doesn't it? That's what
Yeah,
it does.
exactly. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
got to
Despite
respect it.
despite getting rid of the replays and all that,
Exactly.
at
Disgrace.
least they're clinging on to one thing.
Yeah. Actually, do you know what? As much as I'm trying to act all like I'm above all that, I was actually a bit fuming that they got all the replays purely
Yeah.
for
Oh yeah.
grassroots clubs. That's it. That's the only
Yeah.
bit.
Definitely.
That's the big thing I will say. But look, the financial statement was released yesterday, Ben.
Hmm. Mm.
Did you? There's a lad called Martin. Most people probably know him. MPH. I can't remember and then some numbers on Twitter, and he did the financial statements out, and it was the Tim from the Office meme with him just going in the
Yeah.
meeting,
I saw that.
and that's just to me that's the perfect encapsulation of that. I mean, before we sort of dive into it, what are your kind of top line takes, if you like, on it?
It's just I didn't really enjoy the part where I mean I think it's just kind of a big gaslighting exercise. A lot of it from Levy, sort of saying we can't spend money that we don't have. He massively also contradicts himself. Like in there's a bit which I saw Billy T posted a section of it yesterday where it was like, I often read calls for us to spend more given that we are ranked as the ninth richest club in the world. However, a closer examination of today's financial figures reveals that such spending must be sustainable in the long term within our operating revenues. He then goes on to say, we cannot spend we do not have, and we will not compromise the financial stability of the club. Indeed, our off-pitch revenues have significantly supplemented the lower football revenues this year, testament to our diversified income strategy. It's like massively kind of contradicts himself because it's like, you're praising the off-field revenue that is brought to the club that means that we probably can spend a bit more money than we are, but you're also saying that we can't spend what we don't have. It's just that it's I don't know. It was quite tone deaf as these things always are a little bit. Obviously, it's come at a bad time where we're performing poorly. Last year, I don't think it went down quite as bad, even though it wasn't like we haven't made a significant loss or anything on last year. The figures are they're down, but they're not a million miles away from where we were. But it's also come at a time where we're just crap on the pitch, and so that frustration amidst everything else that's going on with Levy and we feel like we're going to go into another new manager cycle and another summer where we're probably going to be needing to rebuild the squad again. I think the timing of it is obviously can't be helped from his perspective, but has just made it even worse than it actually already is from his point of view.
The thing that feels most wild for me is that it still continues to sort of, because gaslighting I think is the right term for this, because it feels like they want you to absorb this idea that Tottenham Hotspur live in this kind of vacuum within football, a game which we know, regardless of what the stadium is doing right now for us, independently of that, there is so much money coming into the Premier League, being funneled into it constantly, especially for a team like Spurs that have been Champions League mainstays for the last decade or so. More often than not,
Yeah,
we've been in the competition, right? Made it to the final. Our global reach, if you like, as a result of that, has multiplied exponentially. So this sense that, well, yeah, you know, we can't really operate outside of these means, but I mean, I just see Tottenham still operating in a way that we kind of always have done, which is okay. We buy as smart as we attempt to buy smart. Let's say that, right? Because we know our transfer dealings aren't always that good, but I think we try to do it the right way, and
yeah.
there's a varying degree of success to that. The elephant in the room, really, that he constantly wants to leave out is this game changing stadium. what friend of the show, Charlie Parrish, just nailed it for me, which he tweeted. Levy's statement is wild to me because it makes it makes me think you're going to have to do all of this, and then he highlights NFL, F1, Beyonce, Kendrick, rugby, boxing, just for us to sign Timo Werner on loan twice in 6 months. After a while, you ask, what's the point? You've done loads of the hard work. Now it's surely just time to sell out. It's starting to feel there is I don't know. There's a feeling of like existential dread about the business of Tottenham Hotspur for me now in many respects. Just that we've all been drawn into, and I think it's right to do so, obviously, because I don't think the results on the pitch have been reflective of the quality of the team, even if it isn't where we'd like it to be. But so much of the conversation has been about Ange. Should he stay? Should he not? But as it was put to me, sort of Flav asked me on the Fine Cock the other week, like, do you think it really changes though if we get rid of Ange and we bring Iraola in? I was like, I think we probably finish higher up the table, perhaps, hopefully. But do I see us being a team doing what Arsenal? They're the best comparison, really. What Arsenal are doing? No, I don't, because they go out with a clear agenda to win. And once again, the statement is just, what are we supposed to do? We were always defaulting back to, where does this kind of losing mentality come from? Why Spurs never getting anywhere in cup competitions at the business end of them? All that type of thing, right? But we have just arrived at this point again where, at a crucial kind of clutch point, where we're being asked to assess the future of the club, we're looking at the kind of financial stability of the club, if you like. And again, the message from the chairman is, well, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to compete?
Yeah. I think the thing is, it's like no one's... I saw Charlie's tweet yesterday, and I saw him having like a interaction with someone in the replies where he was saying it almost feels like Levy is kind of hanging on to this to kind of prove a point a little bit to everybody and say, no, we can do it this way. It's like you've been saying this for ages, and you've kind of like, you both said it about like gaslighting and the whole thing of like this game-changing new stadium. This is just the beginning when we after the Champions League final and all that kind of stuff. It's like you've done a lot of good work to kind of get us into the position, but what's the point of being in this position if you can't take advantage of it? That's what it feels a bit like to me. And I tweeted yesterday, I was like, no one's asking Tottenham to go out and be irresponsible with money. You can't get away with doing that in the modern era. You can't. And Levy is right to an extent with having to spend within your means, etc., because of FFP. But we know the means that we can spend with him are greater than what we are currently showing. Like Tottenham can spend more money. We can spend more money on wages. We can be more ambitious. It's just like, what's the point of being in this position when we generate silly amounts of revenue? We kind of whore our stadium out to all these different events, which, if that's going to generate money for us to actually be a successful football club, I've got no problem with Beyonce being here 4 times a year, or the rugby or the NFL or whatever, because that was what it was supposed to do. That was supposed to be the catalyst of a vehicle for us to actually be successful. But we've regressed, and our wage bill has decreased in terms of a percentage share of our revenue over the course of the last 5 years consistently. So we're going down. We're being less ambitious, and we are less successful as a result of that. It's just I don't know. Like I said, if you, what's the point in doing all this? And that's kind of what Charlie was hinting at as well. Like, what's the point of doing all this if you've actually got nothing to show for it? Because we haven't got anything to show for it. We've regressed over the last few years massively.
No, I mean, because I think in the statement it talks about us being a successful football club.
Yeah,
we want to be.
In what way?
We're successful financially, great, but we haven't won anything for 17 years now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think what does irritate, and I've got to say, like, it does irritate me now, because I was very much, and I think my more rational brain gets it, right? I'm like, look, the stadium is sat empty most days of the year, right? It's empty more often than it's not. It is. Hang on, wait. Then it's not. Yeah, I was right the first time.
Yeah.
And so having these events and stuff, fine, great. But it's the fact that we were sort of lured into doing this under the auspices of this money is getting funneled into the club. Like, you see, we've seen the way, right? You're not as old as I am, Ben, but still, for most of your life, you've seen Tottenham at least operate at a level. Yeah, all right. It's not Manchester City. It's not what Chelsea have been doing, but we've still always spent a decent amount of money, more than the rest, if you like, kind of thing, right? And we were sort of sold this idea that, well, we operate here right now, and then when we get this stadium, we're going to be up here. But if anything, we've actually gone down, which is the bonkers thing. And so to a degree, like when I start to see all of these concerts and stuff now, it does actually it does it like today. The members, we all got this email. Buy all these Molten Brown products because we've got this new. Just fuck off. Stop selling me stuff that isn't. Tottenham are doing really well this year. We're going to get some players and we're going to win the league. We're going to try and do our best, because I guess my point with all of this is, if I really dive into it, is that we have a statement like that yesterday from Levy that says we are not going to spend outside of our means. What he's saying by that is we're not going to be emotional about this. We're not going to spend loads and loads of money to try and maybe win a Premier League, to maybe get an FA Cup over the line, to get a Carabao Cup like Newcastle have done. We're not going to do that. We're going to operate in a sensible fashion which is sustainable. Do you know the last time they didn't do that, though? The last time they got £1 billion out of the bank was to build this stadium, which the fans are all repaying now. Like, it's just so they were happy to act in an unsustainable fashion and gamble. Basically, it was a smart gamble because they knew they could, as you say, whore this venue out to be anything other than a football stadium. And so it's essentially just it is what we've suspected all along, and what a lot of people have suspected all along. An investment company have gotten their claws into profitable real estate, i.e. a Premier League football club, made them a bit better, increased the brand to a point that means they can borrow. They can securely borrow the amount of money that they can for something like a stadium.
Yeah.
And get loads of money. And the thing is, I've always been very, very on the fence about Levy. I've always been like, look, you know, I think he's doing an all right job. Even when it came to building the stadium, I thought, fair enough, I get it. Like, I love the old White Hart Lane, but I get it. You know, you got to progress or you die, and you get on with it. But now, like what a lot of people are saying, you know, I think he pays himself more than double what the next chairman in the league gets.
Yeah, it was like £6.5 million, wasn't it? I think the bonus for this year or last year, I think it was.
Yeah, the property portfolio continues to grow. But as Paul O'Keefe has said as well, and I'm referencing lots because a lot of people have had a lot of thoughts on this. Paul O'Keefe said yesterday, the game-changing stadium has seen a wage decrease year on year since opening and the sale of the best player in the club's history. They're not even trying to hide it now. And now I'm just like, look, there are some things, and I always try to be positive about stuff, and there are things I like about what Spurs. I'm not saying it's all doom and gloom. I like the crop of the young players and stuff that we're buying. I like the idea of this Vuskovic looks incredible coming through.
Yeah.
Gray's unbelievable. I think a lot of people forget how young he is, and sort of the level he's playing at right now is insane. Bergvall as well, great. Sarr, another really good player, young player. Yeah, there's plenty of really good young players, plenty to be positive about. But at the same time, you know, it always begs that question: how long until these young? There's already been rumours that Barcelona they really want Bergvall again. They're gutted they missed out on him, and they've seen how good he has been for Spurs, and they're willing to lump a load of money on him. How long do these players think? Oh yeah, you know what? I'll stay at Spurs. I'll stay. It triggers me on one hand, but Kane was just saying the other week, wasn't he? Like he was just saying, it just feels really good now to be playing alongside players who I think are at my level, which I think does players like Son and stuff a bit dirty. Does you know, a few of the players he's played with down the years a bit dirty, but I think he was probably referencing more the past couple of years.
Yeah, before he left, I think so. I think you're right. I think it does worry me, like with Gray, Bergvall, Vuskovic, if he does come and he's a massive success, that it's great. The model that we've got in place to a point is great because we have identified like I think an elite level of young talent, like those names that you listed there. And I think Sarr is also one that kind of gets forgotten about a little bit as well in that. But yeah, how long are they actually going to want to stay here if they can't see that kind of long-term plan actually come into fruition of what we want to do? Because you need to build alongside that, not just to increase the quality of the squad, but to enhance the development of those players as well. They need more experienced players around them. They need more quality players alongside them to help them get better and help them develop. Gray and Bergvall have their development this season has been so much more accelerated than we thought it would be, and that's great. And that's come because of the game time they've had, and those sorts of examples will mean that other young players will probably still want to come to Tottenham because they know that we'll get an opportunity and they'll get game time. But more and more players will probably want to do that more with a view of seeing it as a stepping stone to the next thing, rather than actually being kind of suckered in and allured in by like what Spurs might be able to achieve in the future. Like Gray and Bergvall might have been at the time, because they both joined at points where the future looked more rosy. Whereas in the next couple of years, I still think we'll be able to bring in that and identify that level of player, and they'll come because they'll probably get an opportunity, but they'll see it more as a stepping stone rather than trying to build towards something big. And yeah, it's just, we've regressed massively continually since we've been in the stadium. Last season was a good first season for Ange, and I think he kind of exceeded expectations of what we thought he might be able to do. I know it was we were inconsistent towards the end of the year. We had our brilliant moments at the start, and then it all kind of fell away. But to still get fifth in that first year with that sort of squad and the players that were brought in was a good achievement. But we didn't do enough. And I was defensive of the summer window at the time, because it was like, I didn't say it was amazing or anything like that, but I was like, okay, let's trust in what they're trying to do, bringing in young players. Ange's style has worked. A few other players will get better that have already been there, etc. We'll try and do some more in January. And you said I've been a bit on the fence about Levy as well. I've never really before kind of the last sort of 3-4 months or so, I'd never really got into it too much, certainly in content, because I wanted to kind of like focus more on what's going on the pitch, and because there's a lot to be excited about. But everyone kind of has their point that they reach where they're just like, this is just enough. And I think the way that January was handled was that end point for a lot of people, where regardless of what you think of the manager, and I think a lot of people over the last couple of months since January have kind of probably made their minds up on Ange, even if they were defensive of him at the time. And I'd probably put myself in that as well. Like, I really wanted it to work, but I think it's probably abundantly clear that it's not going to. If he wins the Europa League, that'd be absolutely amazing, but I'm not sure I see enough to kind of make me feel good about being successful over a long period of time. But I think everyone gets to their point with a manager and the chairman as well. And I think January was that for a lot of people, because regardless of what you thought of Ange, you could see a manager that was massively struggling with the lack of resources, whether that was kind of self-inflicted from his style of play, the injuries that we got. You need to give him help. And we were clearly wanting to do business, but we all left it to the last minute, basically. And we could have picked up 6 more points maybe in January than we would have done. We could have maybe allowed ourselves to have a better opportunity to progress in the League Cup in that second leg if we'd have just done a little bit of business earlier, got them actually attuned to the Premier League and ready for minutes. It's just, I think January was that kind of tipping point for a lot of people. The Leicester game was obviously grim. That was when obviously the people have been doing a lot of good work with the Levy out movement and change for Tottenham and stuff for a long time. But I feel like that was when it kind of really got to a head, losing to Leicester at home, even with the sort of, poor run into the ground team that Spurs were able to put out. The way we kind of threw that game away and the grim feeling around the club that day, after what had happened, maybe even sort of the month before. I was thinking about it this morning. It feels like so much has happened in the last few months since this, but you even think back to the Liverpool game and the whole Squid Game activations when we're getting beat 6-3 at home by a team, yes, is going to go on to be the champions, but it's little things like that along the way when it's kind of so in your face, when the team is massively failing on the pitch, that are just thrust in front of you that make people just think, no, you know what, I'm done with this. And I think everybody gets to a point, even if they have been on the fence with Levy. And I've been like that for a while, because I think that you have to look at the good work that he has done. But at the same time, like I said, what's the point of doing all that good work and getting yourselves into a position like this if you're not going to take advantage of it? So I feel like that's where a lot of people are probably at now, even if they weren't the most staunch Levy out people in the world. I feel like there was just a general acceptance that it's probably time for you to just move on. I don't know why you're still doing this.
It just seems bizarre, doesn't it? Other than can make loads of money, and that's it. That's the thing. Like people,
and then it makes you think, what? Okay, well, he's obviously not going to do it. Then he's obviously not going to leave. It's just like,
do you think there's anything? Do you think, say, Sonny goes, Spurs lose there? I mean, whatever his form is right now on the pitch, Son is still kind of Tottenham's world-class player, at least seen in a world-class bracket. That's probably partly his aura as well as like his ability to this point. When he goes, say we don't have that, and I mean, I say this with sort of caution because usually history's always told me that Spurs always have a well good player. We always do. We kind of lament it. We look at like, oh, look, we once we had Modric, once we had Bale, once we had Berbatov, once we had Kane. The positive spin on that is we always have one of those players or two if we're lucky. But say Sonny retires, as he probably will. He retires or he moves on in the next couple of seasons. There isn't that much of a buzz around Spurs anymore. All right, we've got players like Gray and Bergvall that us as the fans can be excited about and look at the promise in. But people outside the club, they only get excited by players who are truly exceptional, right? Truly incredible. Oh, look what Spurs are doing over there. Like that's good. That's exciting.
Yeah.
What happened? Is that the point? Is that the point when somebody like Enoch, Daniel Levy, whoever it is, thinks actually we need to? Because I think it's not a hot take to say they've coasted on Kane and Son for the past 5 years at least. Time. Right, at least it shouldn't be a reaction, but is it going to be a reaction? Is that what it's going to take? Is it going to take a player like Son leaving, Spurs having next season finishing 10th, 8th, whatever, season after that finishing 10th, 8th? Suddenly, those full stadiums, those full houses that they get pretty much every week when there's a home game, right? Suddenly start becoming 45,000 are in attendance. Start becoming 38,000 are in attendance. It shouldn't come to that point, but is that what it's going to have to take, do you reckon?
Yeah, it feels like it could be. Yeah, it feels like it could be kind of what pushes them over the edge because, regardless of what you think of Son right now, he is kind of he's still the franchise player. He's still what puts a lot of eyes on Tottenham from like around the world. And obviously we know that we all obviously get a lot of tourists come over from Korea to come and watch Sonny, and that's great because it helps, it helps kind of keep the stadium full and also hopefully generate some sort of atmosphere and also make the club more profitable. But that business, he's kind of banked on that business model because of the success of someone like Son. But if Son then goes, a lot of people have said, there's a lot of cynical people out there that's like, as soon as Son goes, then they're all gonna leave. They're not gonna, people like that aren't gonna come and watch Tottenham anymore. You're gonna lose that fan base. And I don't think it's gonna be as drastic as that, but there will be a kind of drop off. And then that does make it seem a little bit more like, okay, well, actually, who's the guy at Tottenham? Who are the people actually kind of coming to see? Who we've kind of lost, regardless of what you think of him over the last couple of years, we've kind of lost that leader and that franchise player. Spurs suddenly sort of then start drifting out these kind of conversations that, regardless of how poor he's been, having a player like Son sort of does keep you in because he is still seen as a world-class talent, even if he's declined over the last couple of years. And then the interest in Tottenham from a global point of view does start to diminish a little bit. It does start to decline. And that might be what makes them realise, actually, we need to really invest in this club to kind of get us back to where we were and get us back to actually even just like, because it's going to take so much work to even get back to where we were like last year or a few years ago, where it's like regular Champions League contenders. You think of the sort of clubs that have overtaken Tottenham in that race. And look, the Premier League, I do think we'll kind of go through a stage in the Premier League over the next few years where it will become uber competitive like it has become, and that kind of top 4, top 5 race kind of changes every year and you get a different team maybe finishing in there. I don't think it's going to be set in stone like it maybe was 10 years ago. I think with the money that's in the league now, you've seen how clubs like Bournemouth, Fulham, etc. have kind of been able to compete. Villa, Newcastle, obviously, you'd see them as two bigger clubs that have maybe going to start to overtake Tottenham just generally in those kind of conversations. So to even get back to there is going to take a big step. And if Tottenham do then start finishing 10th on a regular basis because of that lack of investment, then you do lose your kind of franchise player. The attendances start dropping, whether that's from people who have just kind of had enough or whether that's from more tourist fans who've come over to see Son play and all that kind of stuff. The interest just diminishes and Spurs kind of fade a little bit more into irrelevancy. That might be what really hits them. It's going to be the empty seats that hit. Everyone always says this, like about protests and stuff like that, and people will say you should just stop going. It's like, it's very hard to do that as a football fan because as much as you hate what's going on at the club, you've loved that club for your whole life, so you're not just going to necessarily stop going. I know some people have obviously done that. People have said that about Man United for ages when they were like unhappy with the Glazers and all that kind of stuff. It's like, the thing you need to do is just stop going to the games, but you sometimes have to separate your love for the football club and the mess that it, even though it's in a mess, you can't, it's hard to drag that away. But then it might get to the point of just because you've been promised so much, and then all you've achieved is like just nothing, and then it's just mediocrity for a consistent period of time, like you're kind of getting at there. People then do lose interest. Fans who have had season tickets for so long just think, oh, fuck this, I'm not going to bother anymore. And then there isn't the same attraction from a global point of view either with tourist fans who want to come and see Tottenham because of the conversations that having those sorts of franchise players allows us to be in, and we just kind of become a bit more irrelevant. So maybe that is that's the straw that breaks the camel's back for them. But I still think Levy's kind of got this sadistic thing of just like, no, I'm going to make this work and I'm going to hold on to it to kind of prove all of you wrong. But, there's still talk of the Qatar talk is not going away. The Amanda Staveley stuff is not going away. So maybe they are actively looking at getting investment from elsewhere. I don't know. But
I was going to ask you about because I haven't seen any of that yet. What's that? What's the root of that, the Staveley stuff?
I don't know. I feel like it's just, I don't know. I feel like it's just not really, it's not been, I haven't seen anything about it in a while, but it feels like it probably will come back up again soon because of how like poor we've been. It's like the way the Qatar conversations. I know there was like legitimate links or what people perceive to be legitimate links a few months ago.
Yeah,
I just feel like those conversations will start coming around again naturally because of how disappointing things have been, and it's what people want. So you never know where it's going to be. ITK fake. Like spreading fake stuff to just generate a little bit more noise or whatever. But I don't know, it feels like it's going to come back at some point. And I feel like it might be soon given how restless the fan base are becoming over this sort of stuff.
Be interesting. I think that's the main thing, right? The main part in all of this is the fans, is the people that are essentially it's our hopes, our dreams that you're gambling with, essentially, and also utilizing really to allow you to get these secured loans. The only reason why these loans are secured and the only reason why you have a brand that is of any strength is because you have a lot of people that believe in what you're trying to do and also pay you a lot of money. I just think the main thing for me about it, mate, is that look, the club can continue to sort of, as I always say, plead poverty. The club will always say, we can't act in an unsustainable fashion, but they still expect fans to do it. Wages have been stagnating in this country for however many years now. There's been cost of living crisis. There's been austerity over the past decade. There's wars going on the edge of Europe that are having an economic impact on the rest of us. There's been Brexit. There's plenty of stuff, right? There's plenty of reasons that see Spurs fans having to shell out £1,300. I don't need to tell you this. £1,300 for a season ticket every single season. It's not sustainable, is it? But still, we do our part. Fans do. I mean, I don't anymore because I'm one of those few that just doesn't do it anymore. I'm just, and it's painful and I don't like it and I miss going and I miss a lot of my mates, but I just sort of hit a point with it where I can't be asked for it anymore. I can't be asked to keep giving my money to them. And I think for me, it just sort of a level of trust broke after the stadium came along, and there was, I think it was a couple of years off. It was a year or two, maybe 2 seasons ago, around the start of the Conte tenure, maybe I can't remember. But when Levy did one of his rare interviews, and he did it with Bloomberg, and essentially his whole point was, look, it was much like it is now. If we want to compete, look, Manchester City, all these type of clubs, they've changed the game, and if we want to compete at that level, we need investment from the outside. And I just, in my head, I was just like, you know what? Like, up until this point, it's been, well, we can't do this because we don't have Champions League. Then Spurs start getting in the Champions League, and then it's, well, we can't do this now because we want to build a stadium. Okay,
you've done
the stadium. It's just always something, but it feels like now more than ever, there's nowhere left for them to hide. There's nowhere left for Enix to hide. There's nothing. There's no other barrier for them to say, well, we can't do it because. Now it's just, well, we're not going to. And that's kind of it. And I think the main cheek of it was right at the very end of it. Essentially, his rallying cry, if you like, to the fans, basically saying, oh, you've got to play your part and try and get us over the line against Frankfurt, try and see us win the Europa League. No, you should have done that in January, Daniel. Like, you should have done that in January. When half the squad was dead and you did nothing. Again.
Yeah. It's also
And they brought him down.
I hate that sort of stuff because it just implies that that's not what do you think we're doing? Like, what do you think all the people that have bought their tickets for the Frankfurt game and are going to support the team away and going to Alkmaar and kind of being fed up that shit that we had a few weeks ago in the first leg? Like, what do you think these people are doing? Like, that is exactly what we're doing. We are supporting the team. It's like, I know that they've got to put these things in those kind of statements to make himself seem a little bit more human and in touch, to say, right, let's get behind the lads and all this kind of stuff. It's just bollocks. Like, we're doing that anyway. Anybody who, whether they go to games or not, just because it's been poor and there've been moments where the fans have kind of turned on you, and he's aware of that. That's kind of probably why he's making that statement of like, I know you're frustrated with me, but we all want the same thing here. Let's get behind the team. It's like, we have been getting behind the team. Don't act like two things can exist at the same time. You can support the team, get behind them in these games where they're having difficult moments, but also show your frustration with the way that the football club is being run. And I think he doesn't see the two things existing at the same time. It's just bollocks. It's just like you said, if you wanted to show your support for this manager and give the fans a little bit something back, give the playing squad a little bit something back, who have kind of been through hell in relative terms over the last 6 months with the injuries and fatigue that we've kind of faced as a result of the poorly built squad, then that was your time to do it. That was your time to show your support for the team and the manager, and you've not done your bit. Of course we're going to do our bit. That's why people buy the tickets to the games. That's why people go. That's why people renew their season tickets. It's like, even with the season ticket thing, it's like, okay, yeah, we've not put the prices up this year. The prices for like general admission tickets or whatever won't go up either, but the price of the beer in the stadium, all that stuff will go up. They've got to find that money somewhere. So you're not doing people the favour that you think they're doing. Even that came across as like, with the adjustments that they made to some of the other ticketing stuff, came across as a bit like, yeah, we're not really doing us the favour you think you're kind of doing. Yeah. I think that's what Levy's thing has been the whole time. He thinks, like you said, he's kind of just kicking everything down the road. There's always an excuse, and I think now they are left the most exposed they've ever been, and there's nowhere to hide, really. So it's been, in a way, it's been good from that point of view of kind of pushing them into this corner where they have got nowhere to hide, but it still feels like nothing's going to change. Like, the momentum that's been built up for, the Levy out movement and change for Tottenham, all that kind of stuff has never been higher. But and for all the great work that's been done and will continue to be done, and I know there's another protest on Sunday, I think, for the Southampton game, which is great. But even though they feel the most exposed they are, you still feel that existential dread of like, is this actually gonna change? And that means that doesn't mean that people shouldn't do it. Absolutely not. People should do it. Like, people should. It should get bigger and bigger and better and better. But yeah, it's despite them being as exposed as they are, you still have this nagging thing at the back of your mind of like, well, why would they go? Still making so much money. It's just just promise it. Yeah, it's just broken promises, and I think people have just got to a point where it's just, this is just, enough is enough now.
You were talking earlier about, like, bit by bit, there's little things like, through the context of the Squid Game thing, bit by bit, just little bits of the game, if you like, go, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the big ones now that we can talk about is this North London derby that's been scheduled for Hong Kong. And I've already highlighted the fact you're a bit younger than I am, Ben. Am I just falling into like gammon territory now by being a bit riled by that? Or
no. I'm the same. Yeah, I'm the same. It was. I just don't think under any circumstances that should happen. And it's also the cheek of it to kind of call it a North London derby. It's like, Arsenal versus Spurs isn't a North London derby. It's the rivalry that makes it a derby, and you don't get that if it's being played halfway across the world. And look, people will. It's very. There's so much of it that is quite ironic from so many points of view, where like the club will go on about like being so green and like so pride themselves on low emissions, all that kind of stuff, and then we're going to fly halfway across the world to play our closest rivals. There's quite a bit of irony in that. Look, these clubs like this always go on these kind of pre-season tours. It's probably just it's a thing where Spurs and Arsenal are there at the same time, but you're doing that to kind of make it the way they're kind of trying to market it as like this, bringing the North London derby to Hong Kong. It's like, you're watering down the importance of the derby and the rivalry by doing that. I don't get it. These lucrative pre-season deal tours and stuff like that, it's never going to change. It's been a thing for ages, but trying to make it more marketable and make it more like competitive by watering down a North London derby where you're going to be playing Spurs' second string against Arsenal's second string, and how great is this, the first time we've done it? It just shouldn't happen on any level. And I don't like the fact that you're playing, for me, like, I don't really like the idea of playing like any English team in pre-season, regardless of whether it was Arsenal. I don't really like that. I get that, in the US they do the summer series and all that kind of stuff, and you get big crowds and that kind of thing, and all right, fine. But I think the North London derby is kind of just it's a bridge too far in my eyes.
Have they did a Manchester derby in the States, I want to say, perhaps?
I feel maybe. I've definitely seen like Man United against Chelsea and Man United Arsenal and Liverpool. Man United played Liverpool last year. I remember that. That's been happening for a while. But maybe there has been a Manchester derby as well. But Man United definitely played Liverpool last summer.
Yeah, I just... Like you say, and I get it. Like, the thing is, there are plenty of listeners to this who are, fans from abroad and everything, and I think it is important to say, like, it's not a pop at anybody.
No, it doesn't matter the location. It's just the fact that it's not. Yeah,
no. And I think anybody that's listened to this for any amount of time will know I've never been one of those. Well, why is the stadium full of like tourists and all that? Because we're an international club, and that's
exactly.
You can't complain about having about wanting huge money signings and then not having fans from all over the place, having the stadium as full as it can be on every single match day. Like,
yeah,
that's fine, but. I would say is like whenever I've had conversations with this, and I would say it's primarily been with American fans. I'll say whenever I've spoken to anybody about this, I would say the vast majority of them kind of like the pre-season tour thing, but still find the whole tone of it all quite patronising. And really, what they do like is the pilgrimage to come over and come to White Hart Lane and experience the sights, sounds, smells of North London. Because that's the thing. Like you look, I don't want to glorify this stuff, but at the same time, I think we'd all be disingenuous to say that part of the allure of the North London derby is the needle that's there.
Yeah.
And it is. There's that like palpable tension in the air all game long. Whether you're sat in one of the pubs on the high road and you see the kind of the police cordon taking the fans up there and the sort of carnage as it gets closer to the stadium. It always happens. And I don't know. I don't know if that's just some weird animal brain side of us that gets drawn to that type of thing. But that flicker of kind of danger, that spite that there is in that fixture is part of, as you correctly say, what makes that game that game. Yeah. And to try and package it up and sort of, it's all a bit... It's all a bit like Pirates of the Caribbean at Disney, isn't it? It's that kind of to steal the sort of the Jurassic Park point, but it's like, you sat there and you're in the monorail and you can see it, but you're not going to get forced to walk the plank or anything else that any other sailors who have been out at sea for a long time would do to you. I don't know. Game's gone, Ben. Game's gone.
The thing is, like, I made a video about this yesterday. I was like, I'm not going to come on and just start ranting about the game being gone, because I think the game's been gone for a long time. Like, this is just another kind of step towards that, I think. And look, like I said, these preseason tours where English clubs will play other English clubs has been happening for a long time, but it does feel like they are mini steps toward potentially in the future building up enough of an interest in an audience and building the kind of appetite for competitive games being played over in other parts of the world as well, and kind of really then starting to strip the fabric away, because it's happening with Serie A. Like, I think 10 of the 20 owners of Serie A clubs are all American, and they're massively pushing for competitive games to be played over in America. And it's not going to be Bologna against Lecce. It's going to be Milan against Napoli or something like that. It's going to be something where there is enough of an interest to actually make it worthwhile doing it. And it feels like this constant kind of Americanization of the game. And like I said, I've got full respect for fans that over the other side of the world that get up at stupid o'clock in the morning to devote their life to watching Tottenham, because there are some fans that in other parts of the world that probably show more support and love for the club than some people in this country do. Like the devotion that some of these fans show. And I get it. Like, you kind of get into these conversations with maybe American fans or fans from other parts of the world where they say, well, you get the NFL come over to your stadium. Like, why don't we get something back? And it's like, I get that. But also, we didn't ask for that, in all fairness. Like, we didn't ask for it. Like, this has kind of been put on to us. And I don't know, it's just a bit, I don't really like it. I feel like there are these kind of constant baby steps towards the fabric of what makes these kind of games so special just being ripped away. And I do think there'll be people out there who go, "Oh, it's not that deep. It's just a pre-season friendly." But I think fundamentally, you just shouldn't be having a North London derby as a pre-season friendly. And I do think these things of English clubs playing against each other abroad in pre-season games and all that kind of stuff, we are gearing up for a world in which that happens on a competitive level. And I just don't want to be a football fan in that world if that actually happens.
Well, because I do get it, because I think if you look at something in isolation, because in some ways, it's a fair point for somebody to look at this and just say, well, in isolation, Tottenham playing Arsenal, what's the harm? Like you say, they're going to play, if it's not Arsenal, they'll play Liverpool or they'll play United or Newcastle or whoever else, wherever else. It's not that deep. Don't worry about it. It won't take away from the sort of the intensity of the North London derby for real in the season, all that type of thing. But that is just in isolation. As you were sort of already making a point, it's already a game that is so oversaturated. All right, I hold my hands up. Part of the problem here, doing podcasts, all that type of stuff. I get it, right? I get the level of hypocrisy here, but I think a few fans sitting around talking and doing a podcast is somewhat different to the industrial scale that clubs and football as an industry partake in this kind of this diluting of the game. And I think we have arrived at a point. We've arrived at a point where, and this is the thing I find most interesting, is that once upon a time, it wasn't that long ago that I was 17, 18, right, whatever. And I would just enjoy football. I'd go to the game, and my dad and people of his generation would be like, I wasn't like in my day. And that was just kind of part of it, right? It was always kind of like game's gone and things have changed. But I think the big difference here now is that I get these moments now where I still obviously love Spurs and they still occupy a huge amount of my emotional capacity, right? My emotional and mental capacity a lot of the time, right? As they do for you, as they do for many other people. But I would say when I think about like the fact that every single moment of football is scrutinised, the fact that we've now got VAR, the fact that various different things, that it's not that deep, that just keeps getting chipped away at constantly.
Yeah.
It feels like we've arrived at this place now where people of my generation, people of generations above me, people of generations below me are all just kind of like, football's just not that exciting anymore. It's just like something about it has just kind of gone a bit. And that's a result of this type of stuff. It's this kind of water torture, this drip that we can just say nice. It's just one drip. It's fine. But we've been having that for. I mean, really, in truth, we've been having that since Sky Sports took over, right? And the Premier League came into fruition, and football became the way that it is. But we're even talking about things like one of the most sort of sacred parts still of football. And I think we will all say, I don't really care about international football. And then the World Cup comes along, and we're all like sort of slobbering dogs for it, right? But even people like Infantino, let's have a World Cup every 2 years, or let's expand the World Cup. Let's get more teams in there.
Let's have a halftime show at the final in next year.
Exactly. Is that true? Is that a real thing?
There's going to be a halftime show at the World Cup final in the US. Yeah. You're right though. It's the water torture. It's like the cumulative destructive impact that these things have over time. It's just like it all adds up. And people I saw, like John Bass was talking about this on the Fighting Cock yesterday, where he was kind of saying, like, when I was a bit younger, he was like, used to watch all football, used to love it, used to live and breathe kind of football, and Spurs, obviously. Now you get to the point where it's like, I only have interest in what Tottenham are doing. And even then, it's fucking painful, but it's like, I don't care about anything else. And I do think that's kind of been, that love of the game generally is kind of been stripped away for a lot of people. Like everyone's, I don't think many people are going to get to the point where they're just like, you know what? I'm not even going to follow my club anymore. I'm just done with it. Like, but there'll be some parts of it that's like you said, like where you don't want to go anymore. You feel like that's kind of been taken away. Like people will get to that point, and then over time it might develop into a thing where like I'm just done with everything. But it's really hard to do that. But people will also just go, you know what? I'm not interested in anything else. I'm not interested in what other clubs are doing. I don't like where football is going. I'm just going to concentrate on what my team is doing on a 90-minute period on a week-to-week basis, and that's it, and I can turn it off. And I think like there is just this, also where there is so much football now, I think the oversaturation of it, like you said, it's easy for me to say when it's my job, like it's my job to come on and talk about Spurs and talk about all things football. Like I've got on my TikTok, I talk about like every other team, what's going on in Europe and the Premier League and other stuff. And because I have to, I still enjoy football. I still enjoy watching football. There are things that happen that make me just feel like I'm going to get fed up of this at some point. But I still do enjoy it. Like I've got a podcast where I talk about Spurs. I've also got another podcast where I talk about, again, all things football, Premier League, Europe, stuff like that. So it might make me a little bit hypocritical to come and say that, but it is true. I do feel like people will get to that point where they're just like, this is all too much. There is so much football. And I know, again, like I said, it's hypocritical for me because I make a living out of there being so much and so much conversation. But I think that is also what's turned a lot of people off. And I can totally understand that as well. It's just overexposure and oversaturation. It's just like these little things over time that just make you think I'm done.
I know people will say, "Oh, you're just letting yourself off the hook," but I do think what we do with this type of stuff is it's just it's a modernisation, a minor extension of what fans have always done, which is all we're doing is what we would have done if we were standing around in the pub. Is just talking about football. It's fans talking about football, and other people can listen to it. Nobody's forced to watch our pods, listen to our pods, or YouTube stuff, or TikToks, or anything like that. That's an opt-in service. The rest of it, and I know people will say, "Well, so it is with football. You don't have to watch Tottenham play Arsenal in a preseason," but it's just not how it works, is it? It's not how it works, and we all know that's not how it works. Will we all sit and complain about this preseason friendly against Arsenal? Yes, obviously. Will we also all watch it? Yes. Obviously.
Yeah.
Like and that's it. That's how they've won. They've got us, right? And that's not Levy, that's not Enoch. They're a part of this bigger
It's the machine.
picture.
It's football. It's just
exactly.
It's
a football industrial complex, right? That's it.
Exactly.
Mate, we're just sort of, I guess, getting towards the end of it. We'll just have a little nod to Chelsea, to Ange. Ange Ball is back this week. I've sort of noticed of late, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, I'm just saying I've noticed of late, I've always seen you as a pretty pro-Ange voice, and I've seen you wavering of late. Yeah. Where are you at now? How are you feeling?
I think I'm at the point where I don't think he should necessarily be the manager next season. I don't think sacking him now necessarily makes sense because I don't think there are the options out there to go and get someone in that it's going to immediately turn around and we're going to go and win the Europa League. I still think that he has the backing of a lot of players in that squad, and I think the performances in Europe to some degree have kind of given an inclination of that, like that easing out my second leg. I think some of the football that we played in that game and the young players again kind of coming to the fore show that they are still ready to fight, and it's going to be difficult against Frankfurt. But I think that for that, I think despite how just turgid the league games have been, and again going into the international break, because Spurs always seem to do and have done, I think, for every single international break under Ange, we've gone into it off the back of a defeat and a really poor performance against Fulham, where people again are kind of questioning the management of the squad and saying, well, why we probably didn't have to rotate that much. Did you have to take Romero off, which was kind of the catalyst for us losing the game when he's gone away and played 2 90 minutes back-to-back for Argentina against Uruguay and Brazil? There are decisions like that which I think you can 100% fairly question. I think I've got to the point where I don't think we're going to be... I was really hopeful that we were going to be able to really build something special under him and be successful in the long term, but I just don't see that being able to happen. I just feel like I've got to the point where I feel like too many things all have to kind of go right at once for Ange for it to work. And when it does work, it's brilliant. I've said it this season. I feel like despite how poor we've been, our ceiling as a team has got higher, but our floor has got so much lower. And I think he's kind of done, like, that's both ways are down to him. Some of the football at times has been at times as a stretch has been great. A lot of it's been really poor, and his management of the squad has been poor as well. I think really, like, for me, I think I said this on the Fighting Cock a few months back or a few weeks back. I was like, it's actually the games where we've played against the bigger and better opponents where we've been so poor that has actually really made me turn off Ange, rather than some of the defeats against some of the lesser sides. If that, like Leicester, I didn't move after Leicester. I didn't swing towards this. We've got to get him gone, which might sound stupid because we've just lost at home to the worst team in the league, or one of the worst teams in the league. It was actually more like the Liverpool games and the Aston Villa games where I was just like, I don't see what you're trying to do. We are just like, I really don't see it. I don't see any sort of like adaptation when we've, got a lead against Liverpool to kind of like, actually against Liverpool, it was more that we probably sat in a little bit too much and totally abandoned trying to play any sort of way whatsoever. And it was just like we were waiting to get beat.
We've often been quite limp in those games, haven't we?
Yeah, and that's happened. And to be fair to Ange, like that's happened before Ange, and that will happen after Ange as well. I think that's comes back to this Tottenham mentality issue. But yeah, I think I don't know. I've probably got to the point as well now. I think even like I think the Alkmaar first leg was another kind of tipping point on the scale for me of just like we've had so long to work on that game, and that was kind of the best that we could kind of serve up. And again, it was the players not stepping up, but also like we were so easy to play against in that one. And I gave credit to Ange after the Alkmaar second leg. I thought we played really well. I thought we turned it around well. Glimpses of Ange ball kind of coming back. But I still think for the long term, I don't see it working. And it's sad because I really wanted it to work. I really liked the guy. I really backed him. But I think everyone, like regardless of how much you do, I think everyone kind of gets to a point with the manager, no matter how much they like him, where it's probably at the point where if you do think he's going to be majorly successful, it is just blind faith. And all respect for you if you do feel like that. It's good to have hope and faith as a football fan, but I just can't really see it with Ange. But I think keeping him for now is probably the right thing to do. If we go out the Europa League and if you want to get rid of him then, I think that also makes sense. But I think for the summer, I think we should look to move on and should look for another manager.
The thing that annoys me about this club and about the running of this club, because we know exactly how it goes, is that we've just sat through this kind of like, yeah, like say, sort of like a 3-week break. And I'd be lying if I would say to you there isn't a world that I can see us getting done 3 or 4 by Chelsea and Spurs sacking him after that. Yeah. Like just Levy just doing that then, and there's all sat here now to the end of the season. So what was that about?
Yeah,
and especially if we don't have somebody lined up, if Iraola isn't there ready to go, or Frank or Glasner or whoever anybody wants, right? I'm not sort of getting into that one, but I can just see us doing that. I mean, I hope, and that's the thing, I don't want that to bleed into me being, because I want to, throughout all these conversations we've had, the thing that I always want to hold on to, and I still think I do have, even if it's harder to find it sometimes in the dark, if you like, is I still have that glimmer of light, that glimmer of hope always as a Spurs fan that, yeah, we've had a terrible season. Yeah, we've really not looked good to this point. Yes, Ange Postecoglou might be the first manager in Tottenham history to lose 4 consecutive games to Chelsea. I think it is.
Yeah, I think so.
I think I'd seen that, which is kind of one of those little like historical misnomers that people are going to turn into a bigger thing. But
and also surprised that hasn't happened before, given our dreadful record against them over the years.
Probably an odd draw or something in there. It might be. I think I've missed. I think he might be the first Tottenham manager to lose his first 4 games to Chelsea. I think that's what it is. Either way, there's that bit of me that's like, well, they can't take away the fact that we're always going to hope that Spurs can turn up in this game. That whether or not it means however high up or not we climb up the table, I don't care about that. I just want to beat Chelsea. And then what I want to do is beat Southampton. And then I want us to beat Frankfurt. And I want us to go on and win the Europa League. And I think it's when you look, as unlikely as it all might seem at some times, I think even the most hardened cynic somewhere inside of them still has that bit of hope. Or else I refuse to believe that they would engage with the sport of football anymore.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
that's what it is ultimately. It's this kind of this big gamble on hope, like you say, on dreams, on wishes, all that type of thing, and that's still there. And I don't want to lose that. I mean, I do think I do think we're going to get done by Chelsea, but
So I think Palmer's back, Jackson's back, Madueke's back. They've got it's literally the most typical circumstance in which we'd probably be playing Chelsea away. It's like they've got all their players coming back that've been out for a while. They've been out of form, and they need to kind of establish a little bit of momentum to kind of kick them on and get them in the Champions League. It's the most obvious 2-0 to Chelsea ever. They're not brilliant. We just don't turn up and they just beat us. It's like I know exactly. It could probably predict exactly what's going to happen. We probably won't have a shot on goal in the game. Like I went last year to the away game towards the end of the season. It was just I've seen us put in some abject performances at Stamford Bridge before, but last season was just horrific. Like I remember, like there was the whole thing of Ange going crazy on the touchline to, I think it was either Basuma or Sarr, about passing backwards. It all just felt like a massive mess. We just didn't really create any sort of chances whatsoever, and they scored 2 goals and beat us. And it was just, And one of them was from a set piece as well. It was kind of right in the middle of the whole Tottenham can't defend set pieces thing towards the end of last season, which obviously we couldn't, but it was right at the peak of that. And I feel like we're going to kind of see a bit of a repeat of that this year. Where we just turn up, don't really. Again, like there's players there that I wouldn't be surprised if they really do sharp and hold a good account of themselves. Like I wouldn't. Maybe he'll go with, because we've got 3 games in the next 10. Next week from the Chelsea game. Obviously, the Frankfurt first leg is a week on Thursday. Be interesting to see what he actually does with the team, because obviously we're playing on Sunday against Southampton as well. Like I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Gray plays in midfield again to kind of give him another opportunity there, or maybe he'll save that for Sunday. There'll be younger. I think there'll be like the likes of Bergvall or Gray, if he does play, that will come away from it with their head held high, as it has been the case with basically every game over the last few months. But there'll be nothing to kind of cling on to that gives you any sort of belief that we're going to go on a run from here. Like there's going to be nothing like that. So yeah, it just feels ominous, doesn't it? But I'm also with you. Like I wouldn't be surprised if, like, how bad does it have to get against Chelsea for them to actually go, no, we're actually going to sack him. Like we're not even going to give him the Frankfurt game, because there is a world in which that does happen. I don't think it will, but if we get beat 4-5, then what do they? And it turns a bit ugly again after the game with the fans going over and saying, no, you got to stick with us and all that kind of stuff. And it gets really, really bad. Does he just pull the trigger and give it Ryan Mason? I don't know.
Can you imagine that ahead of the protests? I think the protests still become a riot, don't they, as well?
Yeah, 100%.
Southampton.
Because that's the thing, like, even if, like, there'll be probably, like, however many thousands of people go to that protest, you probably say that around 60% of them, at least, are probably Ange out. But I think if they sack him, that's not important to those people. They will still feel like, what have you done? Because regardless of whether you want him out or not, they don't see that as Levy doing the right thing. They just see it as another, like, indictment of his failure, to say, you either should have done this a while ago or you shouldn't have hired him in the first place. So Ange just becomes, as soon as Ange gets sacked, for those people who have been begging him to go, it's not like, see, we're right, we told you, let's kick on to the next person. Still the focus goes on Levy of like, you put us in this situation with this manager and your mismanagement as well of the squad and buying players, etc. So they won't see it as like, it's not a way for Levy to appease the fans by sacking Ange. And that has been the case with previous managers, I think, to say, look, all right, okay, I got it wrong, I hold my hands up, like, to deflect the blame away from him, let's sack the manager, let's go and get someone else. Regardless of how many people dislike Ange, all of the focus will still be on Levy. It won't be on the manager, it'll be on Levy.
Mate, it's just, I don't know. It's weird times, isn't it? It's funny times, but let's just hope we can do something in the Europa League, innit? That's it, basically. Yeah. All eyes on the Europa.
I've still got the hotel booked for Bilbao. That's not been cancelled yet. So
good man.
We live in hope. I'm going to Frankfurt as well, so I don't know why I do it to myself, but should be good.
I'm quite tempted to do it. I haven't got a ticket, but I'm quite tempted to road trip it and say.
Yeah, we're planning it at the moment, but it should be regardless of what happens, it should be good. But you never know. With Tottenham, we might turn up and beat them next week. Who knows?
Come on, you Spurs, up the Spurs. Cheers, Ben. Where can everybody watch, listen to you if they don't already know?
Mainly TikTok and YouTube for like my stuff. Just my name, Ben Bowman. I've got another Tottenham account on there, Ben Bowman THFC, where I kind of it's more focused Tottenham stuff on there. It's my second account, and then YouTube as well, just Ben Bowman. Darren and doing podcasts as well. We haven't done that for a while, but my co-host Will is currently in the midst of his final year of uni, so he's cracking on with that. So that'll be back soon. On the Fighting Cock, fairly regularly as well, and also FC Bottle Job podcast, which is mine and Seb's podcast, where we actually don't really talk about Spurs, which is nice. We kind of just talk about all things football and Premier League and everything else. So go and listen to that if you want to.
You still getting blowback for the name, Ben?
Not, and you know what? Not as much anymore. Like it was funny because like I don't think we could have made it clearer that it wasn't a Tottenham podcast. But like naturally, I get why people were a bit like, "Why have you done this?" But it was more, you know, me and Seb, who both do the podcast together, we kind of come from a world of like Seb's really big on TikTok as well. We were kind of like, what's a buzzword that kind of really encapsulates online modern football discourse? And it was like, that feels quite good. It's painfully a little bit ironic that we're both Spurs fans, but that's not why we did it. And it's not a Spurs podcast anyway. If it was a Spurs podcast, I'd 100%. We would never do it, but also would understand the furore if we did, because it is kind of this where an element of self-deprecation goes a little bit too far. But yeah, it's a place where we get to actually, for once in our kind of working lives, not actually have to talk about Tottenham, and just we do speak about Spurs on there because obviously we talk about everything in the Prem, but actually nice to kind of get to talk about other clubs a little bit more with a little bit more focus. So yeah, that's Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you find everything. So if you want to go and listen to that, then feel free.
Lovely, cheers, Ben.
Pleasure, mate.